James Cleverly joins me now. James, you may have heard the question there from John Sargent. What do you do, James Cleverly, when it gets very difficult out there in Israel? How will you cope with that?
Well, sadly, the situation is already very difficult. We have seen an unprecedented terrorist attack against Israel. We have seen Israel, I think, shaken to its core by a death of people unprecedented, even in the eras of conflict since the formation of the modern state of Israel. So, of course, we do support Israel's desire for self-defense. We do support their actions to re-establish peace in southern Israel and to remove the threat from Hamas terrorists. In all the conversations that we have had with Israel, of course, we do raise our commitment to international law and our desire to minimize civilian casualties. They are very conscious of that, and they have given commitments that they will do whatever they can to minimize civilian casualties, although, of course, because of the geographical and political situation in Gaza, with Palestinians being put intentionally in harm's way by Hamas, that is incredibly difficult.
James Cleverly, do you agree with the former MI6 chief, Alex Younger, warning that an invasion will play into the hands of Hamas?
Well, there is, of course, a real risk that Hamas is successful in turning this into a wider regional kind of Arab-Israeli or Muslim versus the rest of the world conflict. Israel are very conscious of that and are listening very carefully when we discuss what we can do to minimise the risk of that happening. I've been speaking with the leadership of countries in the region, discussing how we can minimise the risk of that happening. But Israel are conscious of that, we are conscious of that, and the international community is working to minimise the risk of that happening.
Is your worry, though, James Cleverly, that this could be an open-ended conflict with no obvious exit? Because once Israel go in, it's very hard to see how the conflict will end.
Well, of course, this terrible situation has run on for many years already. Israel left Gaza in 2005. Gaza has been run by Hamas since 2006, and Israel have come under a consistent attack from Hamas emanating from Gaza since that time. So, of course, we are working to ensure that Israel have a plan, have an exit strategy, and we will, of course, continue to do whatever we can to minimise the risk that this becomes an enduring, extended, painful regional conflict.
Is there a risk, though, of war crimes by Israeli troops?
Sorry, I missed that question.
Sorry, James Cleverly. Is there a risk, though, of war crimes, that the humanitarian rights of those in Gaza could be violated by Israeli troops? And what would the UK say to that?
So I have raised the importance of international law and the minimisation of civilian casualties directly with the Israeli government. President Herzog, the president of Israel, has reaffirmed Israel's commitment to international law and their desire to minimise civilian casualties. As I said, one of the challenges is that Hamas habitually puts Palestinians in harm's way as part of their wider efforts. They are a terrorist organisation. They use terrorist tactics, and those tactics are not exclusively directed towards Israelis. They are also, there are millions of Palestinians living in Gaza under the yoke of a terrorist organisation, and Hamas's actions are putting those Palestinian lives at risk.
On that point, James Cleverly, your Tory colleague Crispin Blunt warned that the UK will be complicit in war crimes if we support Israel's attempt to defend itself. What would you say to Crispin Blunt and people on your own backbenches?
Well, I have spoken to Crispin about this issue. He is a long-standing opponent of Israel's actions. I fundamentally disagree. I fundamentally disagree with his assessment of this situation.
In terms of the UK and how many Britons might be out there in Israel and Gaza, do you know how many Brits are actually being held hostage by Hamas? Are there any at all?
So we don't know precise numbers. The nature of Israel as a state, particularly as a haven for Jewish communities around the world, means there are a very large number of dual nationals, of British dual nationals, but who regard themselves as Israeli, regard Israel as their permanent home, indeed may even be serving the Israeli Defence Forces. So the precise numbers, excuse me, so the precise numbers of British people, British nationals that we need to support is unclear. We know that in Gaza there are numbers in the low hundreds of people who have registered with the British government seeking our support, and we will of course support them in whatever way we can, and we will continue to support British nationals who are in Israel who are seeking to return back to the UK.
You've got flights laid on, haven't you, for those in Israel? How are you dealing with Brits in Gaza? Are you helping them to find a way out, maybe to the south?
So we have been liaising very, very closely with the Israeli government, with the Egyptian government, and we know that there have been talks to try and reopen the Rafah crossing. Now, that is the border crossing between southern Gaza and Egypt. At the moment, that is the only credible exit route from people from Gaza. We will continue to work to try and get that crossing reopened, although at the moment it is not open, and that is, of course, making humanitarian and consular support into Gaza incredibly difficult.
Yeah. The UK has deployed military assets to the Eastern Mediterranean, James Cleverly. Why is that? Will the RAF be doing any airlifts, for example, or why are we out there with our military hardware?
Well, we are keeping our options open with regard to how we support British nationals in the region. So this is to give us as many options in terms of consular support as possible. We're also trying to deter this becoming a wider regional conflict. So we are saying for any organisations, militia groups or others in the region that are seeking to turn this into a regional conflict, so we're going to do everything we can, both diplomatically, to prevent this spilling out into becoming a regional conflict.
So is there a possibility then that the British Army or the Navy may get involved in some kind of confrontation out there?
So our posture there is predominantly to support British nationals and any work that we need to do for consular support. We are not envisaging engaging in military action.
And just to ask you about the marching in London yesterday, where you're standing, tens of thousands of demonstrators in London. Were you concerned by that? And of course, they're marching in support of the Palestinian people, but there were some other people there with badges, some pictures of paragliders on their backs, that kind of thing. That makes you worried? I mean, Hamas is a proscribed terrorist group in this country.
So one of the points that I would make is that we have a long-standing tradition of protest, and I completely respect people's right to protest. I would also, however, make the point that supporting the cause of the Palestinian people and supporting Hamas and their terrorist atrocities are not the same thing. And I think that some people have rather naively conflated the two. Hamas has been responsible for significant loss of Palestinian life as well as Israeli life. Hamas are no friend to the Palestinian people.
James Cleverly.
They have blocked the Oslo process. They have collapsed
James Cleverly, thank you.
The talk of two-state solution. They are no friend of the Palestinian people.
James, there's lots more to come.